Larry Johnson is the former Deputy Director of the State Department Office of Counterterrorism. Mr. Johnson, good morning.
Morning, Katie.
You know, we spoke about 24 hours ago after
Right.
this happened. We did not, you emphasized not jumping to conclusion that this was some terrorist act. Obviously, this morning, you believe that's the appropriate conclusion to draw.
Yes, absolutely. I've spoken with some people in the government, and they've indicated that there was, in fact, some advanced intelligence. It was general, but it was pointing to the fact that Osama bin Laden was training, was putting personnel through training in aviation. And so clearly, you didn't have to train people in this to take, how to take off and land a plane, just to maintain airspeed and to be able to steer the plane. And unfortunately, it looks like that's the case. You don't have any other group in the world that's connected with doing something like that.
So you're pretty convinced, Larry, that that Osama bin Laden's fingerprints are all over this?
Yeah, and again, I'm not a reflexive, let's hate Osama bin Laden and he's the villain of the moment. But when you look at the incidents that have occurred over the last 10 years, and you look at the people that are killing Americans and calling for the death of Americans, Osama accounts for about 80% of that activity. And he has been the only one willing to take these kinds of casualties to kill innocents. The other folks are fairly, they don't, guerrillas in Colombia and in Turkey and even Hezbollah and Hamas have not gone out and aggressively attacked Americans. So I think it's the past behavior coupled with the recent threats that leaves no other conclusion.
Let me go back to something you said just a moment ago. You talked about advanced intelligence.
Right.
Can you be more specific about any kind of communiques or messages that were somehow intercepted that perhaps in hindsight should have been taken more seriously?
Well, yeah, that's the problem with this, because unfortunately the way the intelligence usually gets on people's desks, it would be one thing if it said we're going to attack 4 aircraft originating in these airports at this time on this date, then of course the United States could take action. Unfortunately, what I have seen over the last 20 years is you get fragments that only after the fact do you say, oh, that's what it meant. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, that's what we're going to find in this case, that there was not, the tidbits that were available were not sufficient to take action on.
Well, is that the way it is? I mean, do we have to just live with that, or can we somehow beef up U.S. intelligence so these can be interpreted more accurately or taken more seriously?
Well, Ambassador Bremer made a point earlier on your show, and he's exactly right. I mean, I've got several friends who are in the intelligence community who have been in places where these terrorist acts have occurred. And what they've told me is basically they can no longer go into the sewer to find the rats. We're staying out of the sewers. We don't want to get ourselves dirty. We want to be very antiseptic and clean on this. And consequently, because we are so risk averse, because we're so afraid of getting sullied with someone who is an unsavory character, we are not in a position to collect this. The world has changed since the Cold War. It was 20 years ago you could go to cocktail parties, try to recruit Soviet agents there. But these people that are attacking us, recognizing they are a small group, they are religious fanatics, and they're not hanging out at cocktail parties and diplomatic functions.
So how do you infiltrate these cells? I mean, how do you use, modern-day spies to figure out what these people are up to? Okay,
one thing you have to do, and again, we've got to be willing to have the stomach to do this. We've got to be willing to put people in place for long-term positions, to have them penetrate religious organizations, sometimes having to portray themselves as members of the media. Right now, if you're an intelligence operative, you can't be a member of the media. You can never go out and represent yourself as such. And you can't go out and represent yourself as a member of the clergy. Now, it's nice to talk in theory that, oh boy, we want to penetrate this, but when we get down to where the hard decisions have to be made, we shy away. But when you're looking at 20,000, possibly 20,000 bodies lying there, at some point, I think this is like Pearl Harbor. It will have the same effect on us. Before World War II started, we still had horse cavalry. You couldn't get rid of the old vestiges that no longer were relevant. And unfortunately, we have the equivalent in the intelligence community today of the horse cavalry. And maybe this incident will provoke us to be able to make the changes that need to be made.
All right. Larry Johnson. Mr. Johnson, thanks for talking with us this morning.
Thank you, Katie.